people like me. You need people like me so you can point your f***ing fingers and say, that's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy. That's the bad guy.
Welcome to the mother relay. We're covering today's top boxing news.
Okay, we'll start with this. Two of this weekend's combatants exchanging pleasantries post-fight. Alicia Baumgartner stated, "Thank you, Christina Linardatou, for taking this fight, being a warrior, a mother, happy to share the ring with you 5 years later," to which Christina responded, "Happy to share the ring with you too. That was an amazing fight that I really enjoyed. You came back stronger and much better. Thank you, champ."
The score is settled between them. They're 1-1 with each other now. I don't think there's going to be a tiebreaker.
Christina has suffered her third professional loss, though I don't think there's any shame in it when you think about what fighters have beaten her before. Delphine Persoon, Katie Taylor, Alicia Baumgartner, who she beat some years ago. Some years later, Alicia wins the fight.
She had her figured out the second time out.
But that doesn't mean that most every fighter here today will have the same success. Opposite the ring, today's Christina Linardatou that Alicia had this past weekend. Rest assured, the Christina that I saw, while second best opposite the ring, Alicia Baumgartner would not be second best with some other fighters that are out there. And being honest, 130 pounds, for me and my money, that's far too low for Christina to campaign. She shouldn't be down there.
Moved up from that weight a long time ago and has been campaigning north of super featherweight for many years now. Many years later, I don't think that's a safe or healthy weight for her to make. In fact, I think it's a wonder that she was able to go the distance, having taken the punishment that she took. That's a credit to her toughness and durability, but I think 135, 140, and 147 are far better weights for Christina than 130, and there are many opportunities for her at those weights.
Think about 135, a fight with Rhiannon Dixon or Caroline Dubois.
I think 135 is a much healthier weight for Christina to make than 130 was.
And at 135 pounds, you have Rhiannon Dixon, you have Caroline Dubois, you have Elham Mekhaled, many others.
Dixon and Dubois in particular, those two immediately come to mind because at some point, they're going to have to step it up in class. They're going to have to face a live animal, a former champion, and that's what Christina Linardatou is.
It's already proven that some of the best and brightest fighters and some of the strongest punchers at or around these weights cannot stop Christina Linardatou. And fighters like Rhiannon Dixon and Caroline Dubois, they don't have Christina's experience in the ring.
There'd be some interesting fights for Christina if they were offered to her, and it all depends on how she feels, what she wants to do. That's at 135, at 140, where Chantel Cameron still reigns as that division's undisputed champion. If she beats Katie Taylor...
Say the second fight goes down in the fall of winter months, and Chantel Cameron wins the second fight the same way she won the first. I could go for Linardatou versus Cameron. I vaguely recall that a couple of months ago, that was a fight that was being explored. If I'm not mistaken, I think Christina was Chantel's mandatory challenger. She's not anymore.
But I think she was a few months ago, I vaguely recall.
And if Chantel beats Katie Taylor and she remains that division's undisputed champion, Linardatou versus Cameron would be a barn burner. And 140 pounds, by and large, is a much, much healthier weight for Christina than 130.
Think about 147.
There are three reigning champions at 147 pounds. There is newly crowned IBF champion Natasha Jonas, Ring Magazine and Lineal champion Jessica McCaskill, and Sandy Ryan, who she's going to be fighting very soon.
Could definitely go for Christina Linardatou versus any one of them, any one of those fighters, those champions.
And 147 for a 35-year-old Christina Linardatou, I think, would be a much, much, much healthier weight than the weight she made for this past weekend's fight, 130 pounds. You will notice that Christina's got very meaty quads, big thighs. That's where the power comes from. And being a pressure fighter, a physical fighter, an explosive puncher.
Like I said, that she was able to take as much punishment as she took this past weekend opposite the ring, Alicia Baumgartner, who's a strong puncher, a sharp puncher, that Christina didn't go down and didn't go out. That's a credit to her toughness, but I think her explosivity was compromised in the process of making this weight.
She hadn't made that weight in about 4 or 5 years, you understand. So it's entirely possible that she wasn't as explosive as she normally is, or could have been, because she left something in the gym trying to make that weight. It happens.
It's not a knock on anybody. It's just the nature of the beast. And at this point in Christina's career, she's probably more explosive as a lightweight, a super lightweight, or even a welterweight.
Physical fighters, they need to be explosive. They need to be as sharp as they can be so they can stay in character. And that is hard to do when you're trying to make a weight you haven't made in a long time, a very long time. So I think Christina still has a future in the sport, and I can think of many, many, many good fights for her. It all depends on how she feels and what she wants. I'd like to see her have a rebound fight before this year is out, though. Her not being with a major promoter, hard to know when that would happen.
Though I don't think she's too old to get back to her winning ways. At 35, she's younger than Katie Taylor.
Younger even than Delphine Persoon, who's pushing 40, but still out here fighting with the best of them and winning. So I don't think Christina's too old to get back to her winning ways and turn things around. It all depends on what she wants to do and what opportunities are afforded to her. I'd like to see her have a rebound fight before this year is out. Men's lightweight news, post-fight comments from Frank Martin, who stated, people were really sleeping on Harutyunyan. He had power and an awkward style.
Well, Harutyunyan's a good fighter and a decorated amateur, an Olympic bronze medalist.
Going into this fight with Frank Martin, he was an unbeaten fighter in what was a battle of the unbeaten. So the real story here is that Frank Martin...
People have got to pump the brakes.
Martin himself admits that his timing was off and that he wasn't at his best Saturday night. After going 12 rounds with the previously beaten, unknown Harutyunyan, Martin also determined that the 2016 Olympic bronze medalist from Germany is a much more capable opponent than most people expected. It is what it is. Martin told a group of reporters after his victory, you know what I mean? If they've got something to say about it, hey, it is what it is, you know? So whenever those fights happen against top lightweights, we'll see what the reactions will be in those fights, you know? So if they see flaws in my performance, you know what I mean? And that's the beauty of boxing, that you're always one fight away from your best performance or your worst.
He can turn it around. He's still an unbeaten fighter.
Harutyunyan was actually tougher than a lot of people, you know, gave him props for. People were really sleeping on this guy, you know. He was an Olympian, you know, so he had a little awkward style, you know. He had power. The guys they're fighting ain't even got no power, so I ain't worried about what they're talking about.
Yeah, see, that's bullshit. Nicotila is a strong puncher. The Nicotila that Shakur Stevenson fought.
And Oscar Valdez, he's a strong puncher. He's a knockout merchant. You see what he did to Miguel Burchell.
Now, he's giving Harutyunyan his flowers on the premise that he was a decorated amateur, an Olympic bronze medalist. Funny enough, Keyshawn Davis is a silver medalist.
What would happen if you put Keyshawn in the same ring as Frank Martin? I know what would happen, but do you?
No, because you don't know shit about boxing.
Trainer Derek James implored Martin to become more aggressive before the 10th round began. James told Martin that he was behind on the cards and needed a knockout to win. Martin responded by beating up Harutyunyan over the final 3 rounds, winning the 10th, 11th, and 12th rounds, and forcing Harutyunyan to take a knee with 56
seconds remaining in their fight, made Martin a unanimous winner on the cards of judges Tim Cheatham, Max DeLuca, and Steve Weisfeld.
Would have scored the fight a draw had Harutyunyan not taken a knee in the 12th and final round.
Some people still think Harutyunyan won the fight. They still think he did enough.
Derek, you know, he's big on, you know, not leaving stuff in the judge's hands, Martin said. You know, so I respect it, you know, and I trust what he was saying. He said I was down, so, you know, he was pressing the issue for me to pick it up, and I need to get a stoppage, you know? So I was looking for it, and, you know, then that opportunity didn't present itself when it didn't, but I did turn up, and I pressed the issue in those later rounds when I needed to. Martin lamented that he wasn't more aggressive earlier in the fight, which the Detroit native believes would have made their Showtime Championship boxing main event easier for him.
And more convincing. He was tentative early on. He didn't like Harutyunyan's aggression, or his right hand.
Or the bodywork. It was just like when I was aggressive and moving forward, it was like I was doing what I wanted to do, Martin said. It was just like, why wait for him to throw all these shots? You may be catching him, but he's throwing punches, so don't just be like catching him, go forward. And you know, shoot your shots, because when you're going forward, like he's backing up, you know? So just shoot your shots.
I don't think Frank Martin beats Keyshawn Davis. I mean, I'll go as far as saying that if that were the next fight, not that it's going to be because they're separated by different promotional outfits and different platforms.
Forget Shakur Stevenson. I think Shakur plays with this guy. Give him Keyshawn Davis.
Keyshawn beats him right now. Keyshawn beats him.
I mean, I didn't have the performance that I wanted to have, Martin said, you know. I got the W, you know. That's all that matters, keeping my head up at the end of the day, you know. It wasn't my best performance in my eyes, you know. I got so much in my arsenal, but tonight I was just off a little tad.
I didn't buy into the hyperbole around this fighter. Most of it was centered around who promotes him and who trains him. But Frank himself, he's a good, solid fighter. He's unbeaten and he's serviceable. And there are some good fights out there for him, like perhaps an Isaac Cruz fight or a De Los Santos fight.
And they should be able to make those fights happen for Frank because all those guys are on the same side of the street. There shouldn't be anything impeding those matches from taking place.
The WBC #1 guy. If you fought Devin Haney in 2 weeks, what happened?
I beat him.
Decision or knockout?
Knockout.
What round?
Probably like the 8th round. You know, this guy I fought, man, this guy was tough.
Not denying that Harutyunyan was a tough customer and a decorated amateur. This is what Frank looked like with a bronze medalist. What would he look like with a silver medalist in Keyshawn Davis or Shakur Stevenson? He was asked about fighting Devin Haney and Devin being undisputed at lightweight. There certainly is a precedence to ask that question. I'm not actually holding my breath to see Devin Haney fight Frank Martin.
Politics.
I really don't know what Devin Haney's going to do. Maybe he has a rematch with Vasyl Lomachenko, or maybe he fights Regis Prograis, moves up in weight.
Yeah.
Maybe he fights Teofimo. It doesn't look like Frank Martin is in his future. Though thinking about that fight and how it would look like, Frank is some years older than Devin Haney, so he's got his man strength. He is a strong puncher.
Devin Haney isn't.
Devin Haney's bread and butter is his boxing, his technique, his boxing acumen, but not brute force because he's not a brute. And really, neither is Frank Martin. He's a boxer-puncher, whereas Devin is a pure boxer. And stylistically, pure boxers have an advantage over boxer punchers. You think about how Frank Martin was tentative this past weekend opposite the ring Harutyunyan. Wasn't letting his hands go as much as he should have early on. A pure boxer.
They can have that same effect over a boxer puncher. In fact, more often than not they do, because they limit the countering opportunities for that boxer puncher by being defensible, fighting from a safe distance, long range.
On the outside, I ain't got the tail of the tape right in front of me, but just based on how they look, it looks like Devin's a bit taller than Frank Martin, longer than Frank Martin, better dimensions to eventually move up in weight, whereas Frank may be older, but he's a shorter, stumpier, stockier fighter.
Look at how long it took him to realize he needs to hit the gas with Harutyunyan, a far less experienced fighter than Devin Haney.
Harutyunyan, who before this past weekend's fight had only gone the distance once. Went 12 rounds once, and in that fight, he faded down the stretch. He gassed out. I feel like he gassed out this past weekend. That wouldn't happen with Devin Haney.
Yeah, Devin's used to 12-rounders because he's not a knockout merchant. He doesn't go looking for knockouts. He's used to going a distance.
Not that they're going to fight, because I don't think they're going to. They're separated by politics, and very soon, I think they'll be separated by weight. I think Devin's on the verge of moving up and vacating all those belts, and maybe Frank can pick one up, but I don't actually think he'd beat Devin.
Too basic.
For Devin Haney, I think he is. For an Isaac Cruz, who Frank Martin talked about ahead of his fight this past weekend,
Raised some valid points.
he said he believes that Isaac Cruz is doing the bare minimum to secure a Gervonta Davis fight, a Gervonta Davis rematch. We'd be a great fight, but I just feel like Isaac Cruz, he's got his eyes set on Tank. Martin told FightHype.com during a recent sit-down, he doesn't want to fight anybody who he feels is a threat and can mess up that opportunity. That's what's going to happen if he gets in there with me.
And I happen to agree.
Listen, I don't think that Frank Martin is a bad fighter per se. He just has a lot of hype around him based on who promotes him and who trains him. All things considered, I could really go for a Frank Martin versus Isaac Cruz fight. Those two fighters creating that separation to distinguish who is better than who. But Frank is right. Isaac is playing it safe.
He was offered a Ryan Garcia fight. He was ordered to fight Shakur Stevenson. He turned his nose up at Michelle Rivera.
You can see what he's doing. He's circumventing all the risky fights in the hopes that he can get a rematch with Gervonta Davis, and he might get it. Gervonta Davis, who was released released this past weekend.
First images of him now that he's served his time.
He will likely fight for the third time this year in the fall or winter months. The Hector Luis Garcia fight that he had at the beginning of this year, and obviously the Ryan Garcia fight that he had. It's conceivable that Gervonta Davis will fight again in the fall.
I, like Frank Martin, feel that Isaac Cruz has just been biding his time. It's been over a year's time since he fought Gervonta Davis. The Giovanni Cabrera fight that he's about to have, that will be his third fight since having fought Gervonta.
And he hasn't been in any high-profile fights since he fought Gervonta, even though the opportunity has been there. It's all about playing it safe and potentially making it to a Gervonta Davis rematch. And given that Gervonta Davis's people, his handlers, they haven't made Devin Haney an offer.
Gervonta Davis being in jail is no excuse because he's got a team. That's what his team is for, to do business while he's off doing other things. In this instance, serving his time.
For slamming into those 4 people with that car he shouldn't have been driving, he was hit with a slap on the wrist, you understand. Just 3 months.
In those 3 months, what was stopping the people at Showtime? What was stopping Stefan Espinoza or Tom Brown from getting in contact with Devin Haney, who's a network and promotional free agent?
We see that Top Rank has some options for Devin. They've made a play. We also see that Matchroom has some options for him. But I know of no news, I know of no offer made from Showtime to Devin to come over to their side of things and do a fight with Gervonta.
If they wanted to. Gervonta Davis could fight for all the marbles. He could fight for undisputed, win all the belts in one fell swoop if they actually made a play to do the fight, but they haven't.
Enter Isaac Cruz, a fighter who I've long maintained Gervonta Davis could end up fighting again because he's a cheaper, much cheaper alternative to Devin Haney. You can't pay Devin the way you pay Isaac. Devin already makes very good money, far better money than Isaac makes, and he is an unbeaten, undefeated, undisputed champion.
This guy's making in the neighborhood of $3 million per fight. To fight in a bigger fight, a Gervonta Davis fight, it's conceivable that he would want more than that, which is reasonable. The problem is,
Davis's team are boxing on a budget. Don't let the numbers from the Ryan Garcia fight fool you. Those numbers were what they were because Ryan added that value to the pot. Ryan added that value to the show.
Gervonta Davis himself has been on pay-per-view 5 times before he fought Ryan. He never did numbers like that.
And without Ryan and that massive social media following that he brings to the table, all those eyes and all those buys, without Ryan...
Just telling you, without Ryan, it's not likely that Gervonta Davis comes close to doing those numbers. Again.
Because Devin doesn't have Ryan's popularity, his social media following.
So the value of a fight between Gervonta and Devin would be different than the value of a fight between Gervonta and Ryan.
Now stated, to my knowledge, the Gervonta Davis people have not made a play to get Devin Haney in the ring. Isaac Cruz is a cheaper, much cheaper alternative that's right there within arm's reach.
Calvin Ford has said he would like to revisit that fight more than once.
So when you think about that, and you think about Frank Martin's recent comments that Isaac Cruz is doing the bare minimum to make it to a Gervonta Davis rematch, the interest in doing the rematch, it seems mutual, and it's a fight that might happen
This fall.